Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we're going to go over our last limited battle series deck list. It is the Red Luffy deck list, and it's the most iconic character from the series, but it's probably the weakest of the 4-star decks. And I will say, after a couple of weeks of testing and just playing this format a little bit more, I do think that Luffy is not as bad as I maybe first said. There are some weaknesses for it, but it does get a little bit of help being able to combine 2-star decks, and it has more promos than any other color with red, so that is something to talk about. But I do think it's missing a little bit of consistency, but if you do like Luffy and you really like the idea of a red aggro deck, it will be super duper good in the first set, and we'll cover some deck lists when that gets closer to release. But I do think that this is still a good leader in general, and it's mostly just the cards in the deck that are a little bit lackluster compared to kind of other colors. So to start off with this profile, we're going to actually talk about cards we're not adding to the list instead of the ones that we have, but we will go over both. So first, we are not putting the 3-drop Zoro into the build. And kind of similar in the sense of the Jinbei, in just the sense that both of these are just 5Ks, 3 drops with no counter cost. So Jinbei just says, dawn times when attacking your leader or one of your characters other than this card gets plus 1k power during the turn. And then the Zoro is dawn times 1 on either player's turn. This gets plus 1k power, so it'd be a 7k on your turn and a 6k on your opponent's turn. And the reason we're not adding either of those is that they're just 3 drops with no counters, and 3 drops are incredibly easy to get rid of in this format. Every color essentially gets, you're able to, like blue just gets to bounce these back to your hand for free, and then they're not even counter cost, so you just spend 3 dawn to do nothing, essentially, which really stinks. And then also purple has just hard destruction. Green has ways to suspend them and attack over them too, or if they are suspended already, there's destruction, and they just aren't worth it most of the time in my mind. And I just find Motor Time, I'm like, man, I wish these were 1k counters, and I feel like Jinbei probably could have been 1k counter. I don't know what they're doing making him not, but he just really stinks. Zoro, I kind of get it because he's a 6k and 7k, but they just kind of stink. We're also not playing Thousand Sunny, kind of the same thing. This was stuck in my hand for most of the game, and it doesn't really, you spend 2 dawn to get an extra plus 1k dawn for every turn. So you eventually get some economy back with it, but I just never found the reason to use it. So if you like Thousand Sunny and you want to run it, go for it, but I just never ever felt like this was worth it. And then lastly, I smell Adventure Ahead, and I know some people who kind of swear by this card, and it's strictly a -1, but if you like the idea of being able to fix your hand if you need to, go for it. I won't stop you, and especially in a game where there's very little card draw, I do understand the idea of, even if I have to go -1, which essentially, if you have to return all your cards to your deck, then draw the same amount. So if you have 5 cards in hand, and then you spent 1 on this, you put 4 cards back into your deck, and now you have 4 cards. So you discard 1 to shuffle your deck, and then you draw back, and then you lose a dawn for it. But if you think it's worth it, go for it. I just don't like the idea of the card. So that is there. And so we're going to go into it again. This Luffy is a 5k leader, activating once per turn. Give one of your leaders or one of your characters 1 rested dawn card. So essentially, you're able to, let's say, play a 1-drop, and then you rest a dawn, and you can put that dawn on Luffy, and you can swing with it, right? That's the idea. Really simple, but honestly really effective. You can get some really obnoxiously large swings with your leader that your opponent's going to have to either take or spend a lot of resources to kind of get out of. So going through our deck and starting with your 1-drops, we're running 4 of the Tony Chopper. 1-drop blockers are really good in this game, so I definitely recommend this, especially since he's a Straw Hat crew for later kind of One Piece set 1 stuff. And then also 4 of the Nami. They're just good too. You're being able to give Rested Dawn to one of your characters are leader cards as well, so immediately you can pay for it, self-pay 1, and then go from there. I think this will be better in set 1 too, and if you don't like this, it's fine, but it's also 1k counter, which is, honestly, red doesn't have a lot of 1k counters in this format, so I'm pretty much using all of them, except for literally 2, and we'll talk about that. 4 Usops. It plays from your life for free. That's fine. Dawn times 2 when attacking your opponent can activate a blocker with a character that has 5k or more power during this battle. So if you make it like a 4k, then they can't block with your big queen. It's a really weird effect, but being able to trigger and play from your life is pretty good in a format like this too. And it's a 1k counter, so we decided to keep that there. Next up, we do have Karu. I guess it's a 1-drop. I don't know. Is there? It's just a 2k counter or 1k counter. We're not running 4, running 2 because we honestly need this enough. But there's just I don't know. He's good. We want more 1K counters, and this is literally the only one we had left that we could include. So we did that. A big upgrade for this deck is that it does get 4 of these super counters. You only get 2 in the original list, so being able to have 4 in limited battles is nice. It's a 2K. Never ever ever play this card. Just keep in your hand. You would like I mean, there are very rare situations where I'd want to play this card. I just keep in my hand all the time because giving 2 Rested Dawn to your leader or one of your characters is not big unless you want to go wide on the board and swing in, but that's hardly ever the case, like something needed. So at least like don't do it early game. Do it like maybe late game, but early game is not worth it. Trust me. All right. Next up, we have 4 of the Sanjis. Just Dawn times 2, this character gains Rush, and that's kind of good. So on turn 2, turn 2, when you have 3 Dawn or 4 Dawn, you can just play this for 2, use your character ability, put 1, and then 1 unstanding immediately. So if you have 3, that can do it, and 4, you can do it too. He's just really good at being able to pressure opponent and do swings. Then they have to swing into it and get around it, so it's fine. It's fine what it is. We're running also 4 VVs because they're super count or they're regular counters at 1K, as well as the Nico Robins. Never play the VVs, always keep these in your hand. Nico Robins you can sometimes play if you don't really have anything better to do with your Dawn. Sometimes it's like turn 2 again if you don't see your Sanjis and you're like, well, I'm gonna have to play something and go Nico Robin. And the one mistake I always see is like people feel like they have to use their Dawn on their cards and they have no cards in their hand left to counter it with. So don't be afraid to just put 4 Dawn into your leader sometimes and be like, I'm swinging for 9K. I'm going to do damage and not make the board, especially since we have so many rush characters in this deck that it doesn't really matter to build this board since we will be able to get around not being able to attack on the turn we play cards otherwise. So there we go. Frankie, big old 4-drop. Love this guy. I think he's good. If you want to play him on curve, do it. I think he's worth it for what he is, even though he's a 1K counter. I do like him there too. But like having 1K counters in your hand in this deck is not very likely or not very common compared to other colors. So be careful there. Next we have the 5-drop Luffy. This card's honestly the best card in the deck in so many ways. It has Rush, and then Dawn times 2 when attacking, your opponent cannot activate blocker during this battle. A lot of the time is that your opponent's going to take a lot of early game hits for free, and then they set up some blockers to survive and protect their life, and you can just play this Luffy, and then you're good for it. And then if you have 6 Dawn immediately, you can just put 1 under with your leader and yourself. It's an 8K attack that your opponent can't use blockers with, and that's kind of important for this meta. So I think he's worth it at 5. And then we also are running 3 copies of the Monkey D. Luffy promo. I know that these can be a little bit more tricky to get around or get a hold of, but obviously there's also the pre-release promos as well of copies of these, not just the promo pack. So you can be running those as the same thing. But just Dawn times 2, this character gains Rush. So for essentially, if you have 7 Dawn, 1 with leader in there, or you have 6 Dawn and you have a Nami out, you can play this and it gets Rush. And then it's a 9K with Rush, and that's kind of important too, which means that your opponent's going to have to spend at least 5K to get around it. And which means that if they have a 4K counter, they're going to have to use the 4K counter and something else. And if they have some super counters, they're going to have to use 2 super counters and another card to get out of it, and that's kind of strong. So I'm running 3. If you want to only run 2, if you find that's too cloggy, go for it. If you want to run some more Karu for counters, you can do that. I don't think that's a bad idea, but there we go. And then we're already into our event cards. So 2 of the Diablo Jambe. I'm never going to say this right, so you can make fun of me in the comments. But this is honestly a good card every once in a while. Just to select one of your Straw Hat Crew leaders or character cards that your opponent can activate blocker, and if that character or leader attacks this turn. And also trigger KO one of your opponent's blocker characters at a cost of 3 or less. I would almost never do the trigger on this, by the way. Just always put in your hand and then put 9 Dawn in your leader and then play this and swing, and then you've got a 14K attack that they have to get counter out of, and that's usually almost impossible in most states of the game, so that's kind of important. This just is like an alternate win condition. It just means that your leader can turn into one of these 5-drop Luffys, which is nice, and I think that's worth running 1 or 2 copies of, even if we're in a deck that we don't get a lot of card draw. We need a lot of cards. The cards in our hand that we keep are really important, and we want to keep some counter power. This is, I think, worth it at 2 copies. We also have Guard Point. We're running 3 of these. Just your leader gets plus 3K power during this battle. So for 1, that's not too bad. And also trigger your leader or one of your characters gains plus 1K power during this turn. If you want that trigger to happen, go for it. Most of the time, just putting it to your hand is better. But if you're already used all your Dawn, you don't have any Dawn active, then probably do that one. So, but a 3K for one is fine. Especially in a deck like this where we don't have a lot of hand advantage and we have a lot of good Dawn management tools. I think that's fine. And then lastly, 4 of the Gum Gum Jet Pistol. Just 4 to KO something with 6k or less means that even like if we're on turn 4, or like our turn with 4 Dawn, right? Even just playing this for 4 and then having a 6k swing with our leader ability to put a Dawn underneath it is worth it. And there's just a lot of good things that are 6k or less against the game. And then also if this hits in your life, you can trigger it and pop something. So this can save you from dying on the turn. And that is the list for you guys. So I think pretty simple in a lot of ways. And I think there are some ratios if you want to change it, especially like at the high end and the event end. If you want to be more risky but more rewarding on some of your event plays, I think that's worth it. But in general, I really do like this leader. And even though I say it's the worst starter deck, it just means that it's literally the deck. It's not the leader. It's literally the deck that needs some work, and it will get some work with the release of set 1. So that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. We're going to be doing some battles with some of these starter decks in the next couple weeks, as well as covering more of the Romance Dawn set 1 decks and everything, and I'm really looking forward to it as well. So if you guys have a leader you guys want me to cover with Romance Dawn, please let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you all next time.